Before you keep scrolling, give yourself a moment to stay here with these words. There may be a reason you came across this message today. What seems like a random encounter could be something much deeper. Maybe a part of you has been searching for answers, and somehow those answers led you here. For a moment, think about that one person. Picture them clearly in your mind. Notice what happens inside you as you do. Maybe there is a warmth in your chest, a quiet ache, a feeling of closeness that is difficult to describe. That sensation is not your imagination. It is your heart responding to something your mind is still trying to make sense of. This person may be far more significant than someone who simply crossed your path. There can be a strange familiarity in certain connections, as though something inside you recognizes them before logic can explain why. And carrying feelings this deep can be incredibly exhausting when the future feels uncertain. You spend nights replaying conversations, analyzing signs, questioning whether any of it is real or whether you are reading too much into it. But what you feel matters. You are not naive. You are not overly emotional. You are experiencing something that has the potential to change you in profound ways, and that is exactly why it feels so intense. The strongest connections rarely touch only the surface. They reach into places we have spent years protecting. Many people expect love to arrive as comfort, bringing immediate peace after a lifetime of struggles. Yet the relationships that transform us most often begin by disrupting everything we thought was secure. They uncover old wounds, hidden fears, emotional defenses, and survival habits we did not even realize we were carrying. In the beginning, it can feel less like growth and more like chaos. When someone reaches parts of you that nobody else has touched, the strategies you have always relied on suddenly stop working. The person who constantly gives, sacrifices, and tries harder begins to realize how exhausting it is to earn affection through endless effort. They start questioning why they believed love required proving their worth over and over again. That realization can be painful because it forces them to confront a deeper truth. Perhaps they were taught that love had to be earned rather than received. At the same time, the other person may be fighting a completely different battle. Their life experiences may have taught them that emotional closeness leads to pain. Intimacy became linked to disappointment, loss, betrayal, or heartbreak. As a result, genuine connection feels dangerous to them. They pull away not because they do not care, but because the emotions become overwhelming. From the outside, it often looks like one person is chasing while the other keeps creating distance. Yet beneath that pattern are usually two people responding to the same fear in different ways. Both fear rejection. Both fear not being enough. The one who pursues often believes that love will disappear if they stop trying. Silence feels unbearable because it activates their deepest insecurities. But eventually, they must learn that losing themselves for the sake of a relationship is too great a sacrifice. Their value is not determined by how much pain they can tolerate, how long they can wait, or how much of themselves they can abandon to keep someone close. The one who withdraws carries a different wound. Deep down, they fear that intimacy will cost them their freedom, their identity, or their ability to protect themselves. So when emotions become real, distance feels safer. Yet that distance rarely brings the relief they hoped for. Instead, it often creates loneliness, confusion, regret, and a growing awareness of how deeply they care. Avoiding vulnerability may offer temporary protection, but it also blocks the very love they long for. The truth is that healing rarely looks beautiful at first. Sometimes it appears as confusion, inconsistency, emotional overwhelm, or long periods of silence. Growth is often messy before it becomes meaningful. Just as a caterpillar must completely dissolve before emerging as a butterfly, transformation requires old versions of ourselves to fall away. That is why these connections can feel so overwhelming. They expose our contradictions. They reveal how deeply we crave closeness while also showing how much we fear it. They teach us the difference between attachment and authentic love. Attachment says, "Please stay because I need you to fill the emptiness inside me." Real love eventually learns to say, "I want to share my life with you while remaining whole within myself." And there is an important moment in this journey that many people miss. Every meaningful connection reaches a point where everything begins to shift. Surprisingly, that shift rarely comes from a dramatic confession or a perfect conversation. It comes from a quiet choice made within. The moment you stop waiting endlessly to be chosen and start choosing yourself. When that happens, the entire dynamic begins to change. Not because of fate or magic, but because your energy changes. You stop reaching from fear. You stop pursuing from desperation. You stop trying to force certainty. And when you do, the other person is left alone with their true feelings. No distractions, no avoidance, no running, just the reality of what exists in their heart. And sometimes what exists there never disappeared at all. So trust this. Not everything that feels uncertain is meaningless. Some connections are not teaching you how to hold on tighter. They are teaching you how to become stronger, wiser, and more complete within yourself. And often, that inner transformation is what prepares both people for the love they have been searching for all along. Everything you have gone through during this season of waiting has served a purpose, even if you cannot fully see it yet. Not a single moment has been meaningless. There may have been times when you questioned that, times when you looked back at all the affection, energy, and devotion you gave and wondered whether it disappeared into nothing, whether it ever reached the person you cared about, or whether the pain was worth carrying. But love does not simply vanish. It leaves an imprint. Every quiet night spent thinking about someone who was not there. Every moment you carried feelings that never found words. Every tear, every hope, every unanswered question has shaped you in ways that are still unfolding. The love you have felt remains real. It has strengthened your heart, expanded your capacity for connection, and prepared you for something deeper than you may realize. If you have cried through this journey, those tears were never proof of weakness. They were evidence that something mattered deeply to you. They reflected a heart unwilling to give up on what it believed was meaningful. That takes courage. Many people reach a point where uncertainty becomes too painful, and they decide to shut their hearts down completely. They build walls, convince themselves they no longer care, and protect themselves from future disappointment. You could have chosen that path. It would have been understandable. Yet somehow you remained open, even when you were exhausted, even when part of you wanted relief, even when hope felt heavy. That says something important about who you are. Not because endless waiting is always wise, but because your ability to love survived experiences that could have made you bitter. There is strength in that, a rare kind of strength. What many people fail to realize is that the greatest transformation often happens before two people ever come together. Sometimes the true purpose of a connection is not immediate union. Sometimes it is personal growth. Sometimes it is learning self-respect, emotional stability, healthy boundaries, and the ability to remain grounded in your own worth, regardless of someone else's actions. Those lessons are not always exciting while you are living them. In fact, they can feel frustrating and unfair. Yet later they become some of the most valuable gifts you ever receive. Maybe that has been the deeper lesson all along. Not how to chase harder, not how to wait longer, Not how to become more attractive or more deserving, but how to come back to yourself. How to stop measuring your value through another person's availability. How to remember that your heart deserves your own care before it seeks care from anyone else. Because healthy love is never built on fear. It cannot thrive through constant anxiety, uncertainty, or self-abandonment. Real love grows between two people who are learning to stand securely on their own while still choosing one another every day. It grows where honesty is stronger than avoidance and where vulnerability becomes more powerful than fear. No matter what happens from here, do not overlook how much you have already changed. You are not the same person who entered this experience. Your awareness is deeper now. Your understanding of yourself has expanded. Even the painful moments have revealed what truly matters to you. And there is one truth worth holding on to. The love meant for you will never require you to lose yourself. The right connection will not ask you to become smaller just to keep it alive. It will not demand that you silence your needs, ignore your worth, or continuously prove your value. Instead, it will encourage you to become more fully yourself. It will support your growth rather than require your sacrifice. As you move forward, carry that understanding with you. If your heart still wants to care, let it care. If hope still feels genuine, allow yourself to hope. But do not pause your entire life while waiting for someone else to provide certainty. Keep growing. Keep living. Keep becoming the person you are meant to be. Because when you truly begin choosing yourself, your entire perspective changes. And often, when you stop chasing what you fear losing, you discover that what belongs in your life has been moving toward you all along. Many people experience so much disappointment that they eventually retreat into emotional distance. The cost of staying open begins to feel too high. You had every reason to make that same choice. Nobody would have judged you for it, yet you chose differently. You stayed soft in situations that could have hardened you. You stayed open when closing yourself off would have felt safer. In a world where emotional detachment is often mistaken for strength, your willingness to remain connected to your feelings is something remarkable. It reflects a level of courage many people never reach, because they stop trusting long before they have the chance. To love without constantly calculating what you will receive in return is rare. That kind of love creates the foundation for truly meaningful relationships. You continued caring through uncertainty. You remained present through confusion. You held space for your feelings through long periods of silence and unanswered questions. And doing that without becoming bitter requires something extraordinary. It cannot be taught from a book. It comes from deep within a person's character. You possess that quality. And that quality is leading you towards something real. Not a future filled with endless guessing. Not a connection built on mixed signals and constant confusion. Not a relationship where you always feel uncertain about where you stand. You are moving towards something more stable than that. Something that fits naturally. Something that allows you to breathe. A connection that feels supportive rather than exhausting. A love that feels peaceful instead of constantly triggering fear. And while that possibility is real, it depends on a choice only you can make. So what happens next? The answer sounds simple, but living it can be difficult. You bring your focus back to yourself. Not as a strategy to make someone miss you, not as a way to create a reaction, not to prove a point, not to manipulate an outcome. You do it because it is time. You begin reclaiming the energy that has been flowing outward for so long and start investing some of it back into your own life. You ask yourself a question you may not have honestly considered in a very long time. What do I need right now? Not what do they need. Not how can I fix this. Not what can I say to change their mind. Not, how can I make them understand? Simply, what do I need? What would genuinely nourish your spirit today? What areas of your life have quietly been waiting for your attention, while so much of your energy remained focused on something uncertain? Start there. Begin filling those neglected spaces. Give yourself some of the same care, attention, and devotion you have so freely offered to others. Return to the dreams you postponed. Reconnect with the goals you set aside. Explore the experiences you delayed while your heart remained occupied elsewhere. Little by little, begin creating a life that feels meaningful, regardless of what anyone else chooses. Because the more deeply you reconnect with yourself, the more clearly you begin to see everything else. You begin giving yourself permission to enjoy those things again. The hobbies you set aside, the experiences you postponed, the friendships that slowly faded into the background while so much of your emotional energy was focused on one person. Little by little, you reconnect with them. You return to the pieces of yourself that have been patiently waiting for your attention. And none of this requires you to pretend your feelings are gone. You do not have to deny the love you feel. You do not have to convince yourself that something meaningful was meaningless. This is not about shutting your heart down. It is about allowing your life to become bigger again. It is about remembering that your entire future cannot depend on a single person or a single outcome. Your story is larger than that. As you begin expanding your world, something starts changing inside you. It is usually so subtle that you barely notice it at first. There is no dramatic moment, no sudden breakthrough. Yet the shift is happening. You stop feeling incomplete. You stop feeling like your life is paused while you wait for someone else to decide what they want. You stop believing that happiness must remain on hold until one particular situation resolves itself. Instead, you begin feeling alive again. Your life starts regaining its color, its movement, and its purpose. You become rooted in your own existence rather than hanging emotionally from someone else's uncertainty. And that grounded energy changes everything. People notice it. There is something powerful about a person who feels comfortable within themselves. It creates a quiet confidence that cannot be faked. It creates calm strength. It creates a natural magnetism. Real magnetism is not about chasing. It is about presence. And the person you have been thinking about throughout this journey will likely notice that change as well. Not because it is a strategy, not because you are trying to trigger a reaction. In fact, that is the last thing this is about. You do not need another technique designed to control someone else's emotions. This has nothing to do with manipulation. It is simply what happens when someone stops relating from a place of lack and begins relating from a place of wholeness. Everything feels different. The connection itself begins to feel different. For the first time, space opens for something genuine to grow. There is another truth that deserves your attention. The person on the other side of this story is not necessarily the villain. I know there have been moments when the hurt made it easy to see them that way. Moments when the distance, inconsistency, silence, or confusion felt impossible to understand. Moments when it seemed easier to believe that someone was wrong and someone else was right. But human beings are rarely that simple. What appears to be indifference is often something far more complicated. Many people learned long before they met you that love was unsafe. At some point in their life, closeness became connected to disappointment, heartbreak, rejection, or emotional pain. Over time, their mind began treating intimacy like a risk. They did not consciously choose that pattern. It developed through experiences that shaped them before they fully understood what was happening. So what looks like withdrawal is often someone trying to protect themselves from fears they have carried for years. And despite the distance, you remain in their thoughts. In the quiet moments between distractions, when there is nothing left to avoid what they truly feel, your presence still exists within them. They notice your absence. They feel the space where you once were, even when they were the ones who created that distance. Because what exists between two people is not always measured by physical closeness. Sometimes it reaches much deeper than that. But the healing they need to do is not your responsibility. You cannot carry it for them. You cannot solve it for them. No amount of love, patience, or understanding can do another person's inner work. That journey belongs to them. Your responsibility is different. Your responsibility is refusing to let their struggles define your value, refusing to interpret their fears as proof that something is wrong with you. Their wounds belong to them. Their healing belongs to them. Your worth remains unchanged regardless of where they currently are in their process. The most powerful thing you can do is continue becoming the strongest version of yourself, so that if the day comes when they finally move through what has been holding them back, they find someone who has not been diminished by waiting, someone who has not lost themselves in longing, someone who is no longer searching for validation from another person. Instead, they find someone standing confidently in their own light. Someone whole, someone grounded, someone ready. Now imagine something for a moment. Picture yourself waking up one morning and noticing that the heaviness is gone. That familiar weight you have carried for so long no longer lives in your chest. The ache is gone. The tension is gone. Not because you stopped loving, not because you forced yourself not to care, not because you emotionally disconnected. The weight disappeared because the love finally found somewhere to belong. What once felt unresolved has found its answer. What once lived only in possibility has become reality. Imagine looking at this person and seeing something different in their eyes. No hesitation, no internal conflict, no feeling that part of them is still holding back. Instead, there is peace, not dramatic peace, not overwhelming peace, just the quiet certainty of someone who has made a complete choice, someone fully present, someone no longer questioning what they feel, someone entirely there with you. Imagine experiencing a love that no longer keeps you awake at night, searching for answers. A love that does not leave you replaying conversations. A love that does not require endless analysis. A love where your nervous system finally relaxes, where uncertainty no longer sits beside you every day, where you are not constantly waiting for the next sign. Imagine living without the question of whether you are enough, not because you finally convinced someone of your worth, but because you are sharing your life with someone who recognized your worth from the beginning. Someone who sees all of you, the confident parts, the vulnerable parts, the parts still growing, the parts you celebrate, the parts you are still learning to understand. Every piece of who you are, and they choose all of it, not in spite of those pieces, because of them. That vision is not simply a comforting fantasy. It becomes possible when two people commit to their own healing, when neither person expects the other to repair every wound life left behind, when both people take responsibility for their growth, when both learn themselves deeply enough to become truly available for love. That is what may be quietly unfolding right now, even in the waiting, even in the uncertainty, even in the moments that feel confusing or invisible. Every time you choose self-respect over self-abandonment, you strengthen the foundation. Every time you choose peace over panic, growth over obsession, and trust over fear, you add another brick to something lasting. Do not let the difficulty of this chapter convince you that the ending does not exist. The middle of every journey is often the hardest part. It is where certainty feels far away. It is where progress becomes difficult to see. It is where many people begin questioning whether they should keep moving forward at all. And yet, it is often the exact place where the deepest transformation is taking place.